I had to beg you to come see me. Did you for real?
Criminals go to great lengths to cover up their heinous acts, but sometimes they fall short.
He was dropping all the tuxes off. She, being the wife, didn't know all this time. They've been doing this for years.
Watch how these suspects give full-blown confessions, some after being tricked by detectives and some out of guilt.
I just snapped and zoned out and hit her.
So without any delay, let's get to it. Number 1. Nick Holbert. Kelly Bordeaux, a combat medic, left a bar on Friday, April 13, 2012, and was never seen again. Kelly, who was married but taking a break from her husband, had started a relationship with another man, Justin. At the bar Froggy Bottoms, Kelly and Justin befriended Nick Holbert, who worked there. With Justin out of town, Kelly decided to hang out with Holbert as a drinking partner. When she left the bar and didn't show up for work or respond to Justin, the police began searching for her. Given their strained marriage and drinking problems, her husband became the main suspect. Nick Holbert claimed to have dropped Kelly off at home. Although he was a suspect, police didn't think he was behind her disappearance. Private investigator David Mashburn, however, was suspicious of Nick. After Nick served a year in jail for another offense, Mashburn built a relationship with him, and over several months, Nick eventually revealed what happened that Friday night. This is the confession recorded by police body cam 2 years after her disappearance. Nick admitted that he was having a nice time at the bar until Kelly suddenly decided to leave. When he chased her into the parking lot to ask why, she told him she knew about his past as a registered sex offender and didn't want to be around someone who had assaulted a child. At that moment, Nick snapped. He hit Kelly, knocking her unconscious, then put her in his car. When she regained consciousness and started screaming, he hit her again, leading to her death. He buried her 10 minutes away from the bar. Nick Holbert is now serving a life sentence without the possibility of parole. Number 2, David Kinney. On May 7, 2017, Brad McGarry was found dead in his basement with 2 wounds to the back of his head. The first people on the scene were David Kinney, his wife, and their daughter, who immediately called the authorities. The living room was ransacked, and the kitchen was in disarray, making it look like a robbery that went horribly wrong. But upon closer inspection, the cops realized all the valuable items were still there. This wasn't a robbery, it was a setup to mislead the police. The investigation started, and for nearly a day, the police had no suspects. Then, everything changed when McGarry's cousin dropped a bombshell. She said they had been hanging out the day the crime took place until he left to meet a guy he had been in a secret relationship with for years. McGarry called this guy DJ, but she revealed that DJ was married and hiding the affair from his wife. Then she dropped the real shocker. DJ's real name might be David Kinney. The supposed witness now was the suspect. Checking Kinney's phone location, the police confirmed he was at McGarry's house at the time of the murder. They also found evidence of Kinney arriving and leaving the nearby street in his wife's car. With proof of Kinney and McGarry being more than friends, the police now needed a confession. Kinney spun all kinds of stories, but the interrogator outsmarted him, getting him to reveal more and more. Kinney eventually admitted he was in the house at the time of the crime, but claimed he ran because he was scared of another guy. The detective quickly pointed out how pathetic it was to send his 5-year-old daughter into the basement first to find McGarry's body if he knew what had happened. Yes, he sent his daughter into the basement so he could lie about how they discovered the body. Finally, Kinney crumbled and confessed to the crime, then went silent, asking for a lawyer. Imagine how awful it must have been for his wife to learn that her husband was not just cheating, but also a murderer who exploited their child to hide his lies. Absolutely horrible. Number 3, Mark Castellano. Michelle Warner, a mother of 2, lived with the father of her younger kid, Mark Castellano. Not as a couple, though, they were simply co-parenting. Michelle failed to pick up her oldest kid from her ex-husband one day, and her phone was out of reach. When Michelle's brother contacted Mark, he claimed she had left the house after an argument and hadn't come back. The search for Michelle began, with Mark insisting she had abandoned her children. He even went on the Dr. Phil show to portray her as a bad mother who would hit him, though he claimed he never retaliated. However, during interrogation, when presented with evidence that Michelle never left the apartment and with his unusual behavior of leaving home late at night, returning the next day, and then leaving again with a suspicious bag, Mark confessed. He admitted to strangling Michelle and even demonstrated to the detectives how it happened. After taking her life, he left her body in the closet, then returned the next day to move her body and bury it in a shallow grave in an oil field. Number 4, Kroy Bristol, 14-year-old Jemson, his 21-year-old brother Kroy, and Kroy's girlfriend Delmy were taken to the police station for questioning after the boy's mother was found dead in the snow outside their home. Initially, they were sent home after questioning, but not before the couple revealed they had a rocky relationship with the mother. When the autopsy report revealed that Beverly Parker had been strangled, the police brought all 3 back for a murder investigation. While alone in a room, unaware they were being recorded, Delmy questioned Kroy about how he took the life of his mother. Detectives now had proof of their involvement in the murder, but due to privacy laws, they couldn't use this footage in court. They needed a confession. Detectives kept pressing Kroy, and eventually he cracked under the pressure and his girlfriend's control, confessing to the murder. It's heartbreaking to watch that a man would do this to his mother when all she wanted was the best for him. Number 5, Tony Peralta. In New Mexico, a man sitting on a curb borrowed a cell phone to call 911, saying he wanted to confess to a crime. When the police arrived, they found Tony Peralta sweating and taking puffs from his cigarette. Peralta told them he was tired of covering it up and couldn't live with the lie any longer. He confessed to taking the life of his landlord a long time ago and agreed to show the police where he buried the man. Drunk, Peralta didn't even remember why or how he murdered the landlord, but recalled that he was a good man whose life he took for no reason. Following Peralta's directions, the police found the body of William Blodgett. It turned out that Blodgett had accused Peralta of stealing his wallet and tried to evict him. Excessive drinking can lead people to commit heinous acts, but for Peralta, it ultimately led to confessing to a crime he committed 15 years ago. Number 6, Katie Nichols. A news crew showed up at the crime scene where a 61-year-old woman had been stabbed multiple times. A neighbor revealed that the woman's daughter, Katie Nichols, was probably behind the attack as she was mentally disturbed and needed help. What happened next shocked everyone. Katie showed up at the scene and, with the camera rolling, confessed to the crime without hesitation, offering bizarre explanations for why she did it. Although Katie never threatened the reporter and even invited the crew into her apartment to see her mother's supposed satanic props, her strange views and lack of remorse spooked the reporter, who quickly informed the police. Katie was arrested in the middle of the interview. What do you think? Is this a case of paranoid schizophrenia or drug-induced hallucinations that made her believe her mom was the ringleader of a satanic cult? Number 7, Brian Hawkins. Brian Hawkins also couldn't live with his guilt anymore and decided to confess his crime to a news channel before turning himself in. Unlike Peralta, Brian wasn't drunk. He knew exactly what he was doing and believed that while he couldn't undo the wrong he had done, this was the only right thing he could do now. Brian's confession finally solved the case of 19-year-old Frank McAllister, who went missing in 1993 and whose remains were found a year later. Back in 1993, Brian, along with siblings Curtis and Shanna Culver, had been questioned but denied any involvement, causing the case to go cold. 25 years later, Brian revealed that they took McAllister's life to rob him of the money he had to buy meth. Before reaching out to the news channel, Brian even tried contacting the victim's family to reveal the truth. But he found that McAllister's father had already passed away. 2 years after Brian's voluntary confession, he was sentenced to 25 years in prison, the same amount of time he had kept the secret hidden. Number 8, Mitchell Blair. This has to be one of the most disturbing interviews of criminals ever recorded. Mitchell Blair, a mother of 4, was being evicted from her home. When the eviction crew arrived and found Blair wasn't home, they began moving furniture, and while doing so, they discovered something that sent shivers down their spines: a deep freezer in the living room that held the frozen bodies of a teenage girl and a little kid. These bodies were identified as Blair's own children, Stephen and Stoney. Blair claimed her children were demons and alleged that they had been abusing their youngest sibling, something she said she couldn't tolerate. The children's lives were taken 9 months apart, and Blair had been living in the house with their frozen bodies for 2 years. In the interview, Blair showed no remorse, stating she would do it again because she couldn't handle her kids becoming the very same thing that caused her emotional and physical trauma during her childhood. Instead of teaching or helping her 9-year-old son and 13-year-old daughter, she resorted to horrific violence, showing the depth of unresolved trauma she still holds from her tragic past. Number 9. Nicole P. 14-year-old Natalia Miranda was walking to school when a car drove off the road and hit her on the sidewalk before fleeing the scene. Near the site of the hit and run was a duplex where a woman had been photographed. The woman's ex-husband provided the photo to the police, thinking she might have witnessed the incident, prompting them to look for her. The police discovered that Nicole, the woman in the photo, was already in Polk County Jail for an incident at a convenience store just 45 minutes after Natalia was hit. What initially seemed like a potential eyewitness turned into a suspect, as Nicole's car matched the description, had dirt marks on the tires and showed signs of impact. When detectives questioned her, Nicole surprisingly confessed without any pressure. Her reasoning for committing the crime was infuriating and deeply troubling. It's awful to see that, despite decades of fighting against destructive narratives and stereotypes, racism still exists and continues to harm people emotionally and physically. On February 11, 2014, it was Cynthia Kidabaka's 62nd birthday. Living at her son-in-law, Giawad Eustachio's house with her daughter and granddaughter, she decided she had enough when he insulted her outfit. She fired at him with a revolver she had bought a few weeks earlier, firing 5 rounds, then went to her car to reload twice more. In total, she fired 15 rounds, 12 of which hit Giawad, ending his life. After that, Cynthia went out to eat breakfast and gamble. When the police apprehended her, her behavior and confession left them speechless. At first, she pretended to cry and feel remorse, but she soon dropped the act and revealed her true feelings. Not only did she celebrate the confirmation of Giawad's death, but when asked by a detective to pray, she responded with chilling words. Although she believed her abusive son-in-law deserved it, her daughter was devastated, and her granddaughter refused to go near her, reminding her that she had just taken the life of her dad. Number 10. Hitchhiker. John Villarreal was on a quest to rescue a girl he met online from what he believed was an abusive household. On Christmas Eve 2014, James Dobson and his friend Mary Fowler gave him a ride, a decision that ended Mary's life and forever altered James's. Strangers found James and Mary severely injured on the side of I-85. Mary succumbed to her injuries at the hospital. The police knew that James's car had been stolen and that finding the car was key to catching the attacker. A few days later, a police officer spotted the stolen car with John inside and quickly detained him. The car was filled with evidence: dried blood on the seats, bullet shells, and guns. Despite this, John initially acted completely oblivious to the reason for his detention. He denied any involvement in the attack for several hours, but eventually decided to tell the truth about what happened. It's disheartening to think that people who attack those trying to help them make others wary of offering assistance in the future. Number 11. Lee Rodart. On August 2, 2017, Savannah Gold, an employee at Bonefish Grill, sent erratic texts to her parents and then went missing. Police received CCTV footage from the restaurant showing the moments before Savannah's mysterious disappearance. The footage revealed Savannah getting into a silver car, which then shook violently, with the door opening 3 times, indicating a struggle before the car took off. The police identified the car as belonging to Lee Rodart, the restaurant manager and Savannah's boyfriend. Initially, Lee claimed he hadn't seen Savannah that day and was distraught over her disappearance. But when he was brought in for the investigation, detectives knew this was their last chance to make him spill and get to know the whereabouts of Savannah. Although Lee had a seemingly perfect alibi, he had no idea the police had CCTV footage from the day of Savannah's disappearance. When they revealed this footage, Lee realized his lies were exposed. The detectives skillfully shifted from a confrontational tone to an empathetic one, pressuring him to confess. Lee eventually broke down and confessed. It turned out he wasn't as clever as he thought in covering up the truth, and the detectives' efforts paid off, solving the mystery and bringing justice for Savannah. Number 12. Ming Chen. On January 9, 2017, the owners of a family restaurant called the police to report their 5-year-old daughter, Ashley Zhao, missing after they had put her down for a nap. Her parents, Ming Chen and Liang Zhao, emphasized that she might have wandered off through the back door, prompting the police to search the entire area. However, some officers had a gut feeling that Ashley was still in the restaurant, possibly hiding somewhere. This intuition proved correct, but not in the way they expected. They found Ashley's dead body concealed in the restaurant ceiling. It was revealed that Ming had never really bonded with Ashley, having not cared for her as an infant, and when Ashley was with her parents, Ming considered her a burden. In a fit of anger, she beat Ashley to death. Grisly details from the interrogation showed Ming displayed no remorse whatsoever. It's unbelievable how a parent could do that to their own child and still be okay with it. Number 13. Merl Mackey. Laverne Mackey disappeared more than 3 decades ago and was never to be seen or heard from again. Her husband was the main suspect, but even with his contradicting statements about where his wife went, the police didn't have enough evidence to charge Merl Mackey, and the case went cold. Years later, detectives tricked Merl into revealing more details about that day, suggesting it might have been an accident. While Merl never fully confessed to the crime, he painted a different scenario and inadvertently admitted that he left Laverne to die without seeking help. This slip-up provided enough information to finally bring Merl to justice, ending his days as a free man. Number 14. Thane Ormsby. In 2010, Jason DeHaan didn't come back home, prompting his father and brother to look for him at Jeff Ryan's trailer. There, they found a wounded child and quickly called the police. Upon arrival, the police discovered the body of a 10-year-old inside, a man dead in a chicken coop, and another man in the tall grass outside. Initially, there wasn't much to go on, until the police received a tip about smoke near the crime scene. When they arrived, they found Jeff Ryan's truck burnt. A witness mentioned seeing a guy, Bob Stout, with a young male near the truck. When the police questioned Bob, he admitted he had left the city after the crime to drop off Thane Ormsby, a family friend who had been staying with him for a few weeks. The police contacted Thane, and DNA results from fingerprints on beer bottles found at the crime scene matched his. After continuous questioning and pressure on Bob, he finally revealed that Thane had returned on the night of the crime covered in blood, admitting he had murdered Jeff Ryan. With this statement, the police re-interrogated Thane, and this time he confessed to the crime. Number 15. Jaz and Jaz Whitehead. Jaz and Jaz Whitehead called 911, claiming they had come home from school to find their mother's body. Nikki Whitehead had been stabbed over 80 times, along with other signs of brutality. Initially, police struggled to identify the attacker, but soon their focus shifted to the 16-year-old twins due to their unusual behavior, such as wearing gloves to cover their hands and showing a lack of empathy for their deceased mother. Investigators searching the house found numerous items belonging to the twins, hidden with blood on them. Additionally, the girls lied about leaving the house at 7:30 in the morning for school and arriving only 10 minutes late, when in fact they were almost 3 hours late. Despite mounting evidence against them, the twins did not confess 4 years later. While still in prison, they finally admitted to what they did to their mother. It turns out their actions stemmed from rebellion against their mother's strict rules, prompting them to commit horrific crimes. Number 16. Nick Nearing. An eyewitness called 911 reported a young man bleeding to death after being fired at 3 times. Police soon identified the victim through his wallet as Joseph Ross, who succumbed to his injuries in the hospital. Among the gathering crowd, another eyewitness came forward, stating they had seen Joseph arguing on the phone, and moments later, a red Dodge pickup truck pulled into the parking lot. A man got out and fired at Joseph. Police contacted Joseph's brother, who revealed that Nick Naring, who had problems with Joseph, drove a red Dodge Challenger and carried a gun. The police soon apprehended Nick while he was still on the road and brought him in for questioning. Initially, Nick denied any involvement, but the detective tricked him into believing they had video evidence of his truck at the scene and witnesses noting his license plates. At that point, Nick showed his true colors, confessing like a man with no soul. Fortunately, Nick was sentenced to life in prison. His smirk just before confessing to murder and in his mugshot shows no remorse, suggesting he might take lives again. Number 17, Michael Hernandez. At Southwood Middle School in Palmetto Bay, 14-year-old Michael Hernandez lured his friend Jamie Gough into the restroom and stabbed him more than 40 times. After the attack, Hernandez stashed the knife in a hidden compartment of his backpack and continued attending classes until he was soon caught. During his trial, Hernandez's lawyer made an insanity plea, arguing that Hernandez needed medical care rather than prison. However, this plea was discarded when jurors were shown this video of Hernandez's confession, his detailed explanation of the premeditated nature of the murder, and his acknowledgement that what he did was wrong, prompted the jury to charge him with first-degree murder. Number 18, Melissa Miller. Annie Meyer was reported missing on February 2013 after she failed to show up for work for weeks and stopped meeting with friends. Police questioned her roommate and girlfriend, Melissa Miller, who claimed to have no idea where Annie was. For months, the police searched for Annie, but Miller wasn't cooperating at all. Despite Miller continuing to use Annie's credit cards and texting her friends while posing as Annie, she defended herself when confronted, claiming she was more hurt than anyone else. Everything changed when, 4 months later, Annie's body was found in the mountains. Before the police could arrest Miller, she showed up and confessed. Was this the whole story, or was there more foul play involved? That remains a mystery Annie took with her, leaving us with only Miller's side of the story. That's a wrap on the shocking criminal confessions. Let me know in the comments which one you found most disturbing. Oh, and don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more content like this coming your way. Until then, goodbye.